Hello all and welcome, and I am the MGTOW philosopher. And in this video, I would like to talk about an article written for Psychology Today by a man named Satoshi Kanazawa that is speaking a lot of sense. And maybe it's because he's Japanese. I think he's Japanese, going by the name. Maybe that's why, because his country hasn't been totally overrun by feminist ideology, meaning leftist ideology. So he has some sense. And this is back in 2009. This is an old article. I wonder if his views would be different now just based on the fact that the narrative has become so cemented and that you have to agree with it or you will lose your job regardless of what industry you might be in, including psychology. But in 2009, he had this opinion, which I say still holds true today, 8 years later. And it is entitled, Why Modern Feminism is Illogical, Unnecessary, and Evil. Feminism is the radical notion that women are men. Woo! So this guy is pretty red-pilled. I don't know how red-pilled, though. We're going to see. So he's talking about, I guess this article is a response to a book. Although it's not Susan Pinker's intention in writing it, reading her excellent book, The Sexual Paradox, Troubled Boys, Gifted Girls, and the Real Difference Between the Sexes, I cannot help but further reinforce my view that modern feminism in the 21st century is simultaneously illogical, unnecessary, and evil. So a woman wrote a sensible book about men and women and how bad feminism is. I'll believe it when I read it, which isn't going to happen. All right, so let's see what he has to say. Yeah, I'm always skeptical when some woman is claiming that feminism is bad and men are not all that horrible. I always think chameleon. So, yeah, I'm very hesitant to believe that this woman is anything like an actual critic of feminism. First, modern feminism is illogical because, as Pinker points out, now would have made a better article if he would have pointed out what he's talking about in regards to a book, insofar as the context, giving a short summary of the contents of the book. That would have been a better article. But anyway, as Pinker points out, it's based on the vanilla assumption that for lifelong gender socialization and pernicious patriarchy, men and women are on whole identical. Yeah, that's nonsense, of course, but that's what feminism said. Modern feminism tells us that, though an insurmountable body of evidence by now conclusively demonstrates that the vanilla assumption is false. Men and women are inherently, fundamentally, and irreconcilably different. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. No kidding. Any political movement based on such a spectacularly incorrect assumption about human nature that men and women are and should be identical is doomed to failure. I don't know, it's doing pretty good. It's destroying Western civilization. It's pretty much accomplished its goals so far. Furthermore, I mean, it'll fail eventually, but of course, all that'll be left is ashes. Furthermore, modern feminism is unnecessary because its entire raison d'etre... Okay, can I get to speak English, motherfucker? Is the unquestioned assumption that women... Don't you love it when these pseudo-intellectuals start using these little sayings, these little words from other languages to try and make themselves sound clever? Give me a fucking break. Is the unquestioned assumption that women are, and it's always these psychologists, isn't it? These pseudo-intellectuals studying and practicing the pseudoscience. Speak fucking English. And you're Japanese to boot, pal. Something that women are and have historically always been worse off than men. Yeah, that's bullshit. The fact that men and women are fundamentally different and want different things make it difficult to compare their welfare directly. To assess which sex is better off, for example, the fact that women make less money than men cannot by itself be evidence that women are worse off than men, any more than the fact that men own fewer pairs of shoes than women can be evidence that men and women are worse off than women. Right. Men and women value different things make them happy, hence one person having more or less of something doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be less happy than the other sex because, surprise, surprise, they're different. Oh, but not if you go by feminism. However, in the only two biological meaningful measures of welfare, longevity and reproductive success, women are and have always been slightly better off than men. Slightly? In every human society, women live longer than men, and more women attain some reproductive success. Many more men end their lives as total reproductive losers, having left no genetic offspring. By the way, I don't care about that. I have kids, so what? They don't have all that much of my DNA. And once their kids have kids, I mean, so if I have a kid, what are we looking at? Half my DNA, maybe. And then his kids will have, what, a quarter of mine? Not even. I mean, by the time you get to my grandkids, I mean, there's not much there. Big whoop-de-doo-dah. I have no genetic success. I'm not interested in it. I could have had kids if I wanted to, but I chose not to because too many sacrifices. I think the human species will survive without my genome. He goes on to say, it's also not true that women are the weaker sex. It depends on how you judge it. If you're talking about physical strength, yeah, they're weaker. Pinker, who he's talking about without giving much of an introduction to her and her work, big mistake on your part, pal, documents the fact that boys are much more fragile. Nah, both physically and psychologically. Physically, no. Well, maybe. I mean, what ages are we talking about? Because they're talking really, really young. Girls do mature faster than boys. So we're talking about 10, 11 years old, maybe. But after that, no. Need to be a little more specific there, pseudoscience boy. And psychologically than girls, and hence require greater medical and psychiatric care. Bullshit! That's a lie! Motherfucking lie! More ADHD, ADD. Boys are somehow more psychiatrically inclined to mental illness. BS. Men succumb to a larger number of diseases in much greater numbers. That might be true than women do throughout their lives. Yeah, because we're the ones doing all the work. We're the ones out in the world exposing ourselves to the most people, the most stress, the most diseases. So it makes sense that we would be succumbing to more diseases than women. The greater susceptibility of boys and men to diseases explain why boys die in childhood and fail to reach sexual maturity, and why men's average life expectancy is shorter than women's. This, incidentally, is the reason why slightly more boys than girls are born. And yet there's more girls in the world than boys. Yeah, we're so privileged, aren't we? 105 boys to 100 girls, so that there will be roughly 100 boys to 100 girls when they reach puberty. Yeah, except that's not the case. Well, certainly not the case in adulthood. We're having more coronaries, dying from more cancer than any other, yeah, I mean, good Lord. Women ain't dropping dead as much as we are, for God's sake. Of course, we work ourselves to death for women. You know, all the work that we do, and as hard as we work and the stress that we expose ourselves to, lowers our immune system, reduces our immune function. It makes us more susceptible to cancer and heart disease and all this crap. So it's no wonder we're dying sooner. That doesn't mean we're weaker in any way, sense, or form than women. It's just environmental, you idiot. Fucking pseudoscience psychology crap. He goes on to say another fallacy on which modern feminism is based, that men have more power than women. Yeah, we know that's bullshit. Among the mammals, the females always have more power than the male. Thank you very much. And humans are no exception. Of course, feminists would like you to believe that we're an exception. It is true that in all human societies, men largely control the money, politics, and prestige. They do because they have to in order to impress women. Right. Women don't control these resources because they don't have to. Yeah, because the men accrue the resources and then give them to the women. For nothing. Oh, their vaginas, right? Ooh, such a good payoff. What do women control? Men! They control men, you manginas and pussies and cuck boys out there. As I mentioned in an earlier post, any reasonably attractive young woman exercises as much power over men as the male ruler of the world does over women. Right, it's equal. While men might themselves directly control government and money and resources, the women control the men, as I've always said. And when you've got the women voting as well, and not just controlling the man from the household, controlling her own man personally, but now she controls the government through the vote. So she has twice as much power as a man. She has all the power, in fact. He has no power. You cannot let women control government because they already control men, which means they're going to have so much influence over the man that at least half the time he's going to do what women want him to do anyway. When you give women the vote, you give them the other half, and they control 100% of everything. That's very bad. That's not equality. That's superiority. Something I've always said. Women have always been the power behind the throne. They control the men. It's a big myth that they have no power, that they had no power. Total BS that any fool who can't think and have 2 IQ points to rub together will believe. Finally, modern feminism is evil because it ultimately makes women and men unhappy. Right! In a forthcoming article in the American Economic Journal, Economic Policy, Betsy Stevenson and Justin Wolfers of the Wharton School of Business, blah, 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 show that American women over the last 35 years have steadily become less and less happy. Of course they have, because they let a bunch of unhappy old hags who always were and always would be old spinster cat ladies, stir them up into believing that their lives were somehow missing something and that they were disenfranchised and had no power. And then these bitches went out and joined these old hags and made themselves into future old hags, because misery loves company, and these old hags want everybody else to be as miserable as they are. Meanwhile, if those ladies had just stuck to their guns and not been so easily influenced and manipulated to become feminists when they weren't ugly old hags that would end up with no man, and they'd have been happy instead, well, then they would have been happy and feminism would have died off. But of course, women love collectives, and they're stupid, and they're easy to manipulate. And they have made more and more money relative to men. Right. In 147 of America's 150 biggest cities, women make more money until they get married, of course, have kids. And of course, that's a sacrifice that women choose to make. And if you have kids, you have to take time off work or not work at all. So yeah, you're going to make less money if you have kids. That's reality. You don't want that to happen? Don't have kids. Women used to be a lot happier than men, despite the fact that they made much less money than men. The sex gap in happiness in women's favor has declined in the past 35 years as the sex gap in pay in men's favor narrowed. Now women make as much, sometimes even more, than men do, and yet they're unhappy. I wonder why. Can anybody say feminism? As a result, today women are just as unhappy or even more unhappy than men. I love it. As I explained in a previous post, money does not make women happy. Right. So women, being the stupid creatures they are, they see men going out into the world, la-dee-da. She doesn't have to stay in the house and have the boredom of breastfeeding the baby and ironing the clothes. No, he's swinging a pickaxe at a coal mine and getting black lung and dying at the age of 30 while you live another 30, 40 years. Oh, but he's the one that's free. I'm not free. Really? You dummy? You dummy, you? But you feminists need to accept that you've been sold a bill of goods from unhappy, old, bitter spinster hags who are the outliers and exceptions to the rule, not the rule of how women actually are. What made them happy is not what makes the majority of women happy, but they sold you on a false bill of goods, and now you bunch of useful idiots are running around trying to do what you think is red pilling, but it's actually not, because all you're following is a made-up reality, not actual reality. So you're just making more ideologues who are going to spread this cancerous message that is feminism. And you're going to just continue to make each other more unhappy. But that's fine because you're unhappy anyway, and you would have been an ugly spinster broad anyway, and misery loves company, right? Goes on to say, the feminist insistence that women behave like men and make as much money as men do may not be the sole reason for women's rising levels of dissatisfaction with life. A greater incidence of divorce and single motherhood may also contribute to that. Duh! And it's a direct result of feminism, you idiot! A pseudo-intellectual moron! You can't see simple cause and effect. And by the way, women wanting to make as much or more money than men means they're not going to be home to make me a sandwich. Who the hell wants to get home to a dark house? What am I doing married anyway? I might as well get divorced. See a connection, pseudo-intellectual boy? Oh, sadly, he's not a pseudo-intellectual. This is what intellectuals are like. They're not really that intelligent at all. The term intellectual has no connection whatsoever to the word intelligence when you're dealing with people like this. And notice he's not even original. He is quoting the work of someone else. How pathetic. So the feminist insistence that women behave like men and make as much money as men do may not be the sole reason for women's rising level of dissatisfaction with life. A greater incidence of divorce and single motherhood may also contribute to it. Yeah, and they're divorced and single mothers because of feminism, because of their insistence to make more money and work more and thereby leave their husband alone at home thinking, why am I married? At any event, the culpability of modern feminism is making women steadily unhappy because it's based on false assumptions about male and female human nature. Duh! You got to be a PhD psychologist to see that. It's difficult to deny that. Men's happiness has not declined in the last 35 years because there has not been masculinism. Nobody has insisted on the radical notion that men are women, although, as Christina Hoff Sommers documents, this may be happening in our current war against boys. For anyone who is looking for an effective anecdote to modern feminism, I highly recommend Danielle Crittenden's. Oh, gee, you're all about recommending other people and giving your assessments of other people. Don't you have any thoughts of your own, pal? Huh? You just said she's great and you quoted her work. You didn't even really give your own assessments of anything. I highly recommend her work. What what our mothers didn't tell us why happiness eludes the modern women. I say don't read it because you're not a woman. We all already are red-pilled. We already know why happiness eludes the modern women. It's them that do not know because they're freaking morons and lack the ability to reflect at all on themselves. So what's more surprising is that this article was written by a woman, but she may or may not be a chameleon trying to make money off of books. It's irrelevant. Everything she says is 100% true. And if she ain't a chameleon, she's a very rare creature indeed to see these truths as a woman. And this is what I've always said. The more money that women make, the less happy they're going to be because men and women are different. And the more that women try to be men, the less happy they're going to be. And by the way, this talk about masculinism, men's happiness has not declined in the last 35 years because there has not been masculinism. No, you're wrong there, pal. There hasn't been masculine men. Masculinity has been decreasing, you fool. Men are not less happy. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, men are not less happy? I thought that men who avoid women and not deal with women in their crap are more happy. But men are, of course, becoming less happy with the feminization of men. What he's talking about is a movement to indoctrinate or make the other sex become more like the opposite sex. Like women have tried to become more like men, and masculinism in his mind would be men trying to become more like women. But we already have that, you fool. That's called feminism. What are you talking about? This guy is so detached from reality. Hey, pal, you ever heard of a male feminist? There's plenty of them. All leftists are feminists by default. And there's so many male feminists out there, you can't believe it. And there's so many male feminists who are kind of on the fence, but they've still been indoctrinated into this bullshit, so they're far less masculine than they would be without this feminism crap. So yes, we do have that problem. It's just not called masculinism, you idiot. Feminism, it feminizes men and masculinizes women. It's the fuck-up position for both sexes. It's destroying both. You don't need something called masculinism. You already have feminism. Masculinizes women, feminizes men. Oh boy, this guy. So let me know what you think of this article in the comments section. Please like and subscribe and make a donation to my Patreon. As little as $1 a month would help me to continue to make more great content for you guys. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.